Still trying to figure out, though, like, what Sister Alice has to do with the story. I mean, she and Perry Mason are going to right?
Oh, I don't know. Really?
They're totally going to
Is that what the snakes were foreshadowing? I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts, TV. And this week, HBO's super dark, super noir, and kind of weird reboot of Perry Mason. Joining me to get that done and more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist, and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is journalist, true crime author, licensed private investigator, former defense investigator, and our certified cat lady, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello, and I have never stolen a tie off of a dead corpse when I was a private investigator. I'm just going to put that out there right now.
Surprise.
What about earrings?
Well, I mean, if they were pearls, maybe. I don't know.
And finally, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, our favorite doubting Thomas and host of the Strange Arrivals podcast, our resident cynic, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca.
All right. Are you guys ready to tackle our topic this evening?
We are.
Let's get it done. HBO is out with a reboot of Perry Mason. But this time, Mason is not a 1950s defense attorney. Instead, he's a 1930s private dick, working for a lawyer and investigating the case of a kidnapping gone wrong. Emmy Award winner and my favorite hot guy, Matthew Rhys, plays Perry Mason. The mystery includes police corruption, political power, a desperate housewife, and a charismatic radio preacher named Sister Alice. Perry Mason is a stylized LA noir crime show with an all-star cast. Will Mason find the answers in Hollywood's underbelly? And will he get the case-clearing confession the character is known for? Kevin Flynn, I have a confession to make.
Okay.
I've never seen a single minute of the Perry Mason TV show. Have you?
No, because it went off the air in like 1966.
Well, can you just tell me what it was about and whether or not the show tracks with it at all? I mean, I don't think it sounds ignorant, a little bit, but it doesn't seem to.
Ready for a history lesson?
Yes.
Okay, so Perry Mason is based on a book series, and the author's name is, as I forget...
Earl Stanley Gardner.
Earl Stanley Gardner.
Bing, 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 bing.
And so there are a lot of movies and books about Perry Mason, and it was always like Perry Mason in the case of the Lucky Legs, in the case of the mysterious nymph and stuff like this. And Perry Mason is a defense attorney, and the shtick was that he would investigate crimes and for the wrongly accused.
Okay.
And on the TV show, Perry Mason was played by Raymond Burr. What would happen is that he would get, the real killer would get up on the stand, and every week he would get that person to confess to the crime.
On the stand.
On the stand. Yeah, that was sort of the thing. The big finale was always...
It would be like a Jack McCoy moment every single episode.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And he was kind of genteel. He was I don't want to confuse him with...
Atticus Finch?
No. What's the other show about? The
Matlock?
Guy... Yeah, the guy who wears the seersucker suits.
Matlock's derivative, yeah.
In my mind, these are just shows with old lawyer guys that I never watched because they ended before I was born.
Right.
Yes.
And so to bring this around, in this, I don't know if you can really call it a prequel or a reboot or whatever, there are a couple of familiar characters. Della Street was his legal assistant.
On the TV show?
On the TV show and in the books.
Was she a lesbian on the TV show?
She was not.
Okay.
They were never romantic interests.
Okay.
In some of the books
but they
were.
Sparks? The two of them?
No.
Did you keep them in line? Was she his girl Friday?
Just a very competent assistant that he could depend on.
Okay.
He had a private detective himself working for him, and that was Laura Bricker.
Really?
No, it wasn't Laura
Totally
Bricker.
was. Oh, my God.
That was Paul Drake.
Oh.
And in the HBO series, Paul Drake is a black policeman.
Yes.
So that's going in a different direction. Also, police detective Holcomb was his nemesis, who was always arresting the wrong guy.
Okay, and Holcomb is also on this show, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But none of the other characters I can tell are on.
His lawyer mentor, played by John Lithgow, was not on this show. So this is all...
No, and we know why.
We do now. That's true.
But by the way, could we have picked a better thing where we have both a defense investigator
and a noir novelist
on the panel.
Honestly,
okay, I'm done talking. Apparently, just
pretty much
take it away.
This TV show was like HBO was like, we want to make something that crime writers on will review, which is how they make all their decisions at HBO.
Clearly,
will crime writers watch this? Laura Bricker, a show in which the very, very, very sexy Matthew Rhys plays a private investigator working for the defense. What do you think of this concept? Does it read true to you, Laura Bricker?
This is a concept after my very heart. These are the stories I love. I can't say I'm loving this as much as I hoped I would, but I love the fact that we have, this team of people that are going to help the wrongfully accused. It ends up being mother eventually. And the fact that they are out there really going out, doing what I call gumshoe, shoe leather reporting out there on the street, getting to the bottom of what really happened and making sure that justice is really served. So it's definitely, the concept is something that's definitely after my heart. Although I have to say that Perry Mason is just about the most curmudgeonly person and most tormented person. And so it took me a while to warm up to him. I mean, as I said, I think I sent you guys a text. I said, Perry Mason, the only person who doesn't smile when he, am I allowed to say that?
Does it?
He's the only, Perry Mason, the only one who doesn't smile when he has conjugal relations. And his bed breaks.
Right.
And he still doesn't smile. I'm like, geez, this guy is really...
It doesn't seem like fun.
He is really tormented.
Yeah.
Very tormented.
I don't think he or his airplane flying neighbor are... either one of them are having a particular lot of fun during those sex scenes. But anyway, we'll get to that. Laura, are you familiar with Matthew Rhys? Did you watch The Americans, in which he played Philip Jennings?
I did watch the first few seasons of The Americans. And yes, I definitely have a little crush on him.
And have you ever heard... his accent in real life? He speaks with such a strong Welsh accent that almost he needs subtitles.
It's indiscernible.
Have you ever heard him speak with his real accent?
It's like watching Shetland or something, which is definitely one of my favorite shows. But also I'm like, what did Jimmy Perez just say? I'm not really sure. So yeah, thanks to you, Rebecca. I have now watched Matthew Rhys speak how he actually speaks. But I don't think that is a factor in the fact that he's so gloomy in the beginning of the show.
It's not. It's not. It just more goes to underscore my point that Nicole Kidman has no excuse. No excuse for not being able to do an American accent. If Matthew Rhys can do one that's that curmudgeonly and that good and that consistent, no excuse, Nicole Kidman. You heard it here. Yeah. Toby Ball, this is a very dark show. It starts with one of the darkest things you can possibly do. That was also the opening conceit of one of my other all-time favorite TV shows, Battlestar Galactica, the reboot. They kill a baby in the opening sequence of this show. Toby, does it get more noir than starting right there? It's sort of evocative of the Lindbergh baby and all these stories from that part of the century. What did you think?
Yeah, the setup was very good noir. Not only did they kill the baby, they then stitched its eyes open so that it looked alive when they had it. I guess there's a streetcar that goes 2 blocks or something. It was kind of strange. But anyway.
Listen, walking down that hill isn't easy.
We all know Los Angeles has not done public transportation well.
It was like a little train that goes to the neighborhood of make-believe. It just goes 4 feet.
Yeah, it's very strange. Anyway, so yeah, no, it's a good... I mean, it gets a lot of the noir stuff right, I think. The feel is really good. A lot of the characters, I think, do a good job of, playing to some of the noir cliches, but with a little bit of enough of a, at least for the major characters, enough of a twist or a little something that's different to make it not seem tired, or if it's just kind of, really super tired.
I mean, I'd love for you to elaborate for 1 second, because you are a noir writer. You've written these 3 critically acclaimed noir novels. What are the, quote, noir elements or cliches that make a noir story a noir story? I mean, I feel like I know it when I see it, but there have to be things, right? Checklists?
Yeah, well, I think, there's a bunch of things. One, I think, especially for movies and TV, is you have that particular sort of dark atmosphere. Generally, noir stuff has sort of one person or a very, very small group of people who are sort of up against a system which they can't really fight against. They're sort of pawns. That they're trying to rebel against their place in life. It's a cynical take on the world. In that, in sort of the darkest noir, the heroes, they can't really win.
I mean, did Toby not just describe Veronica Mars, Kevin?
Well, he did. He did. And so when you deconstruct noir, you think about neo-noir, which is more modern stuff.
Like Veronica Mars?
Like Veronica Mars or Dare Me or these other kinds of shows where they're taking the same thing. They don't have the hard-boiled detective in them, but what they do have is the same feature that the world there's a good world and a bad world, a dangerous world, and our protagonist is maybe morally ambiguous, or they are world weary. They can bring us, the audience, to that dark world, that evil world, but bring us back and show us what's going on there. And usually that other world is kind of sleazy and it's dangerous, and Toby's right. The hero never really wins, and there's
gets beaten up a lot along the way.
And there are great writers like Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, Mickey Splain, who have done these characters, and it's a great subgenre of crime.
I mean, I really can't tell you. I mean, if you, fair viewers and listeners, have not watched the series Veronica Mars, it is probably the most noir thing that's been produced in the last couple of decades in modern pop culture, and it's brilliant. It's about a teenage detective who is hard-boiled, by the way, who in the first season is trying to solve her own rape, which is pretty much as dark as it gets.
I have not. Wow.
It's very, very good. Laura Bricker, question for you. Some of the themes of the series, one of the things that comes up again and again are gender roles and sort of some very stereotypical sort of views through the pop culture lens of men and women, and then also a couple things that stick out. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was something that definitely stuck out to me when I'm looking at this, because I'm looking at the time period that this is taking place in, and when they're having press conferences, all the reporters are men. They all have like cigars. There is not a woman to be found in that group except for Della, the assistant. Then we have Della, who is clearly much more competent than the male attorneys, and she is relegated to like answering the phones and like finding this guy's shoes, and when she's not there, he can't even take his darn shoes off at night. And and then we also have sort of this like, it just felt so stereotypical, the police officer who kind of the one that wasn't the good police officer, the one that's kind of the nemesis, who's at the house of ill repute. Which again felt very stereotypical, but I felt like there was a lot of, themes of, the women were being downplayed and the men were in positions of power, right out into the point where we see the church scenes with Sister Alice and her mother. And Sister Alice is, a woman who's speaking her mind, and she's a strong woman, and that is very threatening to the men that were there. So,
but Laura, isn't that sort of that patriarchy? Yeah, isn't that historically accurate?
Oh, it is historically accurate.
I mean, it's a piece of fiction, but I mean, does not that fit the period?
Oh, but they're amplifying it a little bit for the show. I mean, they're really putting it in your face.
I felt like it was really in my face.
If there were 20 female reporters,
we're not complaining about the lack of that. What we're saying is, I think what Laura was saying, and what I feel too, is the show is amplifying those elements. Because it's part of the fabric of the set piece. Yeah. That, I think about Drake's wife, who's just like, she's pregnant. She's sexually harassed by the evil cop, the second
buys her a melon or something.
Peaches?
It's real bad. I
was hungry for peaches after that, I'll say.
So, Toby, I do have a question for you about Sister Alice, something you sent me in your notes. I was watching this the whole time, and of course, I was just thinking Scientology, sort of LA-based church that has a lot of imagery that looks a whole lot like L. Ron Hubbard at its center with the boats and the Navy outfits and so forth. But there is another real-life person who you think this is inspired by. Can you please talk about that?
Sure. I'm pretty sure it's inspired by a woman named Sister Amy Semple McPherson.
We got it, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is about the same time. I believe she was also in LA. She was another sort of radio evangelical preacher who was the biggest of that type for a while in the country. I did a quick read up on her because I think she was in the Book of Lists or something. I can't remember where I first ran across her, but it was when I was a kid.
The Book of Lists, that thing you keep in your bathroom, like at your grandparents' house, that one? That's how I remember the Book of Lists.
I've not been to your grandparents' house. But,
didn't she fake her own kidnapping,
yeah,
Toby?
So there was a kidnapping that it wasn't really clear whether it was real or not. I think she was accused of adultery. I mean, you can kind of see... Like, I think the show does a pretty good job of showing sort of the kind of stress and restraint that Sister Alice is under that would sort of lead her to want to fake her own kidnapping, to sort of gain a little bit more control over her own life.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the good parts of this is that dynamic between Sister Alice and these male elders in the church, in that, you know, who's got the power in this relationship? I mean, everybody's going to see Sister Alice, and they can, as much as possible, try and put restraints on her. But when she gets a feeling, she just kind of goes off. And so, but they have the purse strings. So it's this sort of, push and pull between the two of them. And it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But
we should say, too, Sister Alice's mother, played by the great Lily Taylor, one of my favorite.
Oh, is that Lily Taylor? I was wondering
actresses.
Who that was.
It is.
Yeah. All right.
Just trying to figure out, though, like, what Sister Alice has to do with the story. I mean, she and Perry Mason are going to right?
No.
Oh, I don't
really? Think so.
They're totally going to...
I think the church is behind the whole thing. I think that's what it has to do with.
Is that what the snakes were foreshadowing?
Oh, my God. That
was...
That was a good scene.
That was an incredible scene. Laura, was that not an incredible jump scare opening scene to that episode?
I will say it was, because I'll tell you, snakes are probably my biggest phobia, like going. Some people, spiders, snakes.
And pastry boxes are your favorite thing. So you would totally fall for that same trick.
If they came over and they said, we have some raspberry white chocolate scones for you, Sister Laura. Would you like some? I'd be like, sure. I actually jumped up when that scene came on. I was like, oh my God, does it have to be a snake? Really? Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Was that not a great scene?
It was a great scene.
I mean, this is like the house.
You made me rewind it.
It looks just like the Walsh's house from Beverly Hills 90210. This idyllic Beverly Hills setting, Spanish style architecture. They walk out into the beautiful yard. The little girl looks so beautiful and sweet, and then just turns into an exorcist priest in 4 seconds with screaming and histrionics.
Yeah,
it was frightening.
Yeah.
Great scene.
It was. Toby, there are also some kind of gross out gore scenes in the show. You know, we have a lot of close-ups of dead people with, blown out eyeballs and faces. Of course, we have the many close-ups of a dead baby with its eyes sewn open. And we have that weird denture scene where he finds the dent and he's popping it into poor dead George's face. What do you think about that choice to have so much gore and kind of gross out stuff in the series?
Yeah, I was trying to get a handle on that. I mean, it seems like a strange choice because it doesn't really add a ton to the story, I don't think. I mean, I guess you could say that the denture thing maybe, but I don't think you have to do it in quite the sort of dramatically graphic way that they do. So, it just seems like it would turn some people off quite a bit to have that. So I don't know. I don't know why they do it quite that way. I mean, it didn't seem, it's not like it happened in a show that you would take as more realistic. Like if it had happened in, I'm trying to think of one, but The Night of or something like that, I think it would have a different impact than something like this, which you realize.
We did get the feet scenes in The Night of, though, which were pretty gross.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of like close-ups of dead corpses' genitals in this show too, and I was like, really?
Yes, there's a lot of that too.
And I'm like,
a lot of peen.
I'm like, we saw a lot of that, and I saw that in Westworld when they would go in that room in Westworld where they'd be like, okay, now you're all like dead robots, you live in here. But this was like, I almost was like,
HBO's got all kinds of snakes.
Yeah.
But I was like, is it
It's
that
a visual
we're supposed
motif.
to like have this feeling that mortuaries and medical examiners were much less sophisticated, so they just had piles of bodies everywhere? I don't know.
I do want to talk about all the mortuary scenes because our medical examiner in this series, as sort of a fun joke to people who watch other crime shows, is played by Hey, It's That Guy actor whose name I don't know, I'll be honest, but I know he's Hey, It's That Guy actor.
I'll plug it in right here.
He appeared in many episodes of Law and Order SVU as a medical examiner who actually turned out to be a murderer.
Of course.
And he just has that perfect, like, pallid medical examiner, I never go outside in the sun kind of theater guy face for the role. But also he has a very interesting relationship with Perry Mason and his investigations. Yeah. Laura, I would love just to hear about a couple of these scenes from you as a former defense investigator. What do you think of Perry Mason going to the morgue to buy clothing and accessories from dead people from this medical examiner?
That was a bit much, Perry Mason. I mean, seriously, it's not like you have nothing else going on. Yeah, I think it was almost like a shock value. Like we were supposed to sort of feel like that Perry Mason has been in the war and he's so jaded and he's so damaged that he doesn't even like care that he's buying a tie off of a dead body that's probably going to stink like a dead body. As he's like, that's all I could think when I was watching it. Was like, oh man, that is just going to not be a pleasant experience. But it's like, we go from that, which was just like super nonchalant. Like he's like, oh, hey, what do you, oh, that one looks good. Yeah. Okay. I got to go to court today. So I got to have a tie. To then later we have Perry and his sidekick. And I don't remember the sidekick's name there, the fellow investigator that works for the attorney. And they have the medical examiner in the car, and they're just out on they've got their little flask and they're having a jauntily good time until all of a sudden they're in Perry's basement out at the dairy farm, and whoop, there's another dead body. And I'm like, how long has that body been dead? I'm like, that is so not realistic at this point because that body has been there for so long and he's been popping those dentures in and out how many times at this point? Oh. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. There was rigor mortis. There was other things going on here. It's not accurate anymore, Perry Mason. And like, why do you have
And then they move him to the golf course.
And they're like, hey, now we'll put him out in the sand trap. I'm like, seriously? At that point, the body's going to be falling apart, Perry.
I actually did love that where they decided to put it on the golf course so it would end up in their local mortuary, which was very, very smart. Kevin, final thoughts about our friend the mortician and medical examiner and like his role and the way sort of the friendships between the men happen in these series?
He's odd. They're making him odd, I say.
Toby, I really love the scene where Matthew Rhys goes with his neighbor / buddy in that beautiful vintage plane, which wasn't a vintage plane at the time, it was just a plane, to that far-flung bar to get clues for that New Year's Eve party. And it's just so time and place specific and a kind of setting you would never have in a contemporary story. Do you not agree with me that kind of is the kind of scene that you need to do to really make it worth bringing the viewer to a different time and place like Perry Mason is doing, like that kind of atmospheric scene?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I thought it reminded me of a scene, and I wish I could remember which Raymond Chandler it was, but he goes out to a ranch, and it's sort of a similar thing where he leaves the city, and for this one little episode, he goes somewhere completely different and has this sort of strange interaction with this sort of effeminate but dangerous cowboy type guy. And it made me, there's not those sort of...
Was that Payback?
Was that?
Was that Playback? Was that his last
it's
Philip Chandler novel?
God, I probably read it when I was like 18 or something. I just that scene really struck me. But it was sort of a similar thing, right? Which is you have this little episode where you go away from where all the main action is happening, and you have this sort of strange interaction, and it does sort of, it gives you a little bit of insight between the two of them a little bit when you get them away from the airfield, and a little sense of their relationship and her understanding of him as being, their friendship or romance or whatever it is, it goes so far that she's suspicious enough that he's actually doing work when he takes her to this place, like she's got it in the back of her mind that this isn't just all about me, that like I'm a nice like add-on,
she's
which is
wise
accurate.
to his ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why she made him.
I don't think she cares.
That's why she made him jump in the fountain.
I think it's similar.
Perry Mason.
Yeah, it's not like she's. I don't think like she's super disappointed. She's like, all right,
You work. I'll go dance with this other guy.
Exactly.
All right. Well, before we do our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews, if you want to hear an expanded discussion about this topic and also get our review of the Dateline NBC podcast, Motive for Murder, subscribe to the Crime Writers On podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please like and follow us here on Facebook and Instagram. And we'd love to hear your review of Perry Mason. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you not get it? Leave a comment right below this video so that we can interact with you and talk about it a little bit more. You can also join our amazing community in the official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. And for exclusive podcasts and more, head on over to Patreon at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. All right, let's do what we do, shall we? I'd love to know, panel, do you recommend that our listeners and viewers watch Perry Mason on HBO? Is it a thumbs up or thumbs down? Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, I would say this is not the same Perry Mason that, I haven't watched it like you, Rebecca. I didn't watch it either, but I've seen clips over the years, and Perry Mason was not as brooding and cranky and flawed as the Perry Mason in this show is. However, there is like beautiful cinematography in this. There's a really great sense of time and place, and it's a slow start. I definitely found it to be a little bit of a slow start, but overall, once you kind of get cooking with the story at the end of episode 3 and 4, then it's something where I definitely want to keep watching. It's kind of dark. It's a dark story. So if you're okay with all of that, I would say give it a watch, and it is a thumbs up.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Perry Mason on HBO?
Yeah, as we talked about earlier, I think when you're doing this kind of noir throwback stuff, you really have to, you can't play it straight. You got to have a take, and I think this sort of like has a 90% take, and I think that's good. There's a few things that just struck me as being a little bit cliched without anything to really offer. I thought the John Lithgow sort of story arc was pretty lame. And there's a couple other things that are kind of like that, where I don't think it transcends the traditional tropes. But beyond that, I thought it was pretty good. I give it a solid thumbs up. Not the most enthusiastic, but definitely a solid thumbs up.
Kevin Flynn, what about you?
I'm really liking Perry Mason. I think it's a fun show. It's pretty ambitious to take a legacy character, even if most people just only know him by name and don't really know a lot about who Perry Mason
like
is,
me.
like you, and then drop him in sort of this new situation. If this were Atticus Finch, Private Eye, would it be as dreary as
and his office assistant Boo Radley?
Exactly. Scout, run down to the morgue.
Get Daddy a tie.
Yeah, but look, I'm a thumbs up for this. I am liking a LA noir style reimagining of the character, and the mystery itself is kind of interesting. It's an open mystery, right? It's that style where we know
Sort of
who's involved. We don't know why yet, so there's still more to go. I am looking forward every Sunday to watch this.
I really, really like Perry Mason. I'm giving it a big thumbs up, in no small part because I love Matthew Rhys so much. But I also do love, to me, there is a thread here that feels extremely timely. There's definitely kind of like an anti-cop streak to the storytelling that just feels very of the moment in a way that I'm not sure the showrunners necessarily were expecting that would be timely when they wrote this show, I don't know, 2 years ago, or however long production show has been in production. It's also just weird, and I really, really like things that are weird. I like things that feel like there's something a little bit off, and Perry Mason delivers absolutely that. So big thumbs up for me. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime of the week. If you're trying to keep public health officials from learning you're ignoring pandemic guidelines by throwing a large birthday party, don't order 50 pounds worth of fried chicken. Ambulance drivers in Melbourne, Australia happened to be at a KFC when an order came in at 1:30 a.m. for 20 combo meals. They alerted police who followed the customer back to a party where nearly 24 people were awaiting those finger-licking good breasts and drumsticks. The cops grabbed 16 hungry people hiding under beds and in the garage, defying the country's lockdown order. Instead, they got an extra crispy treat, $26,000 in fines for breaking the quarantine and, sadly, no fried chicken. So panel, here's my question for you. This group showed very bad judgment, not only for gathering in a pandemic, but also for signaling to the outside world that they were gathering during a pandemic. What other things did they do, you think, to give themselves away? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
I think they started by sending out an Evite invite to everybody in their contacts list. And then once the party started, they did a Facebook Live and hosted a watch party so everybody could watch them eat that fried chicken and maybe come on down.
All right. Tell me about, what do you think? What else did this group do to signal to the world at large that they were breaking pandemic rules and gathering for a party in Melbourne?
Many cases of Fosters.
What do you think, Kevin?
I think the valet parking was a bad idea.
I'm going to say they also made a run for the border and got themselves a big old pack of Taco Bell tacos.
Of course you'd say.
Of course I would. All right, that is going to do it for us. Remember to follow us right here on Facebook. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another true crime pop culture review. On behalf of all the crime writers, all of us, every single one of us, thank you so much for listening and watching. We'll catch you later.